By season 4, everything was largely in place, the most prominent members of the staff having joined by this time. Paul Chaplin and Mary Jo Pehl joining Mike, Kevin, Trace, Frank, and Joel, plus a couple of home contributors that included Bridget Jones. And we're in the comfortable place of having at least 2 more full seasons ahead of them, which is, a really great sense of security on a television show. Nevertheless, things were changing at Comedy Central. In the beginning, the show had been embraced for many reasons by the fledgling Comedy Channel, but biggest was that the network was so desperate for stuff to fill out airtime, and a 2-hour block show was most welcome, naturally. That the show went on to get great press made it even more valuable, but over time, Comedy Central began to formulate its new identity, which MST3K was less and less fitting into. The Brains enjoyed the kitsch nature of the show, but the network was going for more hip and edgy things. That most definitely wasn't the same handful of barely disguised performers putting on costumes and playing with camp props and cable access level sets. This would come into play more later on, but right now the network was indulgent of the show, except for one sticking point. That 2-hour block was no longer an asset, it was a problem. Could they perhaps shorten it to an hour at least? Technically during season 5 they would finally, but since the wheels are already in motion here, and there's something big to discuss in season 5 anyway, we'll just delve into that right now. They decided to repackage some of their episodes as the Mystery Science Theater Hour. The episodes would be split in half, but the Brains reworked it slightly, figuring that stopping halfway through and then starting halfway through films could be confusing to people. So they introduced Your Host, which was Mike Nelson doing his thinly disguised Jack Perkins impression to handle those aspects of the show.
I'm so glad you've joined me for the second part of Manos, the Hands of Fate. Here's what happened in part 1. A vacationing family and their poodle Pepe stumble upon a resort owned and operated by Satanists. The concierge, the eccentric but charismatic Mr. Torgo, is their first clue that this ain't no party, this ain't no disco, this ain't no fooling around. When the perky poodle puppy Peppy perishes after unwittingly becoming an animal sacrifice, our happy hubby tries to outwit the master. Now fasten your seatbelts, lock the doors, pass me my big gulp, and hang on for part 2 of the never-ending road trip that is Manos, the Hands of Fate.
This also allowed the show to be more easily snatched up for syndication, for the same reason that Comedy Central had asked for it. A 1-hour show is simply easier to fit into a time slot than a 2-hour one.
Spiders are icky and gross, and the one in this film is no exception. I hate spiders, and even though I should know better, I somehow feel they are a direct link to the devil. Small messengers of Satan whose only mitigating trait is the ability to control some household pests. I urge you to find one as soon as possible and crush it. Crush its fluid-draining fangs, its hairy thorax, its ugly little spinnerets. And you can tell me all about it next time on the Mystery Science Theater Hour.
Season 4 notably kicked off with them riffing on a major motion picture. Our highly questionable friends at Film Ventures International used their clip of the whole movie technique to create the blandly named Space Travelers, but it was a repackaging of the film Marooned. Dr. F had commented on Rocket Ship XM that he tried and failed to get it, which is amusing in retrospect. They also provided a film with a bit of brazen nudity, City Limits, but don't worry, Joel is on hand to provide his own weird solution.
Do you guys mind if I open my umbrella here?
Well,
I just thought you never know when something, you're always curious.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Is this impolite to keep it keep the umbrella open while we're...
Season 4 introduced us to the various films in the Hercules franchise and gave us deep hurting as a result, their description for having to cope with a tediously long sequence that involved a sandstorm. Such efforts to fill endless downtime had become so finely honed that they would be put to great use in the season finale. Season 4 also brought us the giant Gila monster, probably the most viewed episode of the show because that film is public domain, so there's no pesky rights issues with that. In fact, when Rhino, the former releaser of MST3K DVD sets, released Volume 10 and didn't realize that they needed permission to release, of all things, a Godzilla movie, Toho is a bit notorious in protecting that particular IP after all. Well, they had to rush out a replacement, so naturally the giant Gila monster was quickly used as a replacement. They even included a skit about it.
Hey, relax. I've got this thing covered. TV's Frank happens to be in a very unique position to see to it that the versus the DVD is replaced with a DVD that everybody is going to love. And I can't foresee any legal hassle with this one either. It's called Star Wars, and I just don't get it.
And there's just so much more. And once again, there's so many standout episodes in Season 4, but personally, as good as a lot of them are, none can really compare to the third-to-last episode, The Day the Earth Froze. I'll describe the film straight this time because that alone is absurd enough. A witch kidnaps the sister of a great smith, so he and the alleged hero Lemminkainen go to rescue her. But to do so, the smith must make the magical Sampo for her. Never heard of a Sampo?
Not.
Well, to be honest, everybody, we don't know what a Sampo is.
Not a clue.
If you know what a sample is, write it on a piece of paper, throw it away, and then try not to think about it. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, all we can really do is just look at what it does and just describe that. So it makes unlimited grain and salt and gold from the looks of it. Not sure what makes it work if you have to feed crap in one end and all this stuff comes out the other side, but Lemminkainen refuses to give up their legacy and goes back for it. But since he can't carry 80 times his own body weight, he settles for just breaking it so nobody can have it. Then, inexplicably, everybody celebrates him not bringing back the Sampo.
He's a failure, la la la. What a loser, la la la. Total failure, total failure, total failure, la la la. Failure, total failure. He's a loser and a chum. Failure, failure, total failure. What a loser, la la la.
Okay, oh, that's for fun.
To get revenge, the witch steals the sun, having already imprisoned various winds and meteorological phenomena, so, why not? The people fight back, the sun is freed, and everyone lives happily ever after. The film is one of 4 that the show would do in this vein, and they are celebrated because they look beautiful and contain enough bizarre culture shock elements to leave even the most seasoned foreign film scholars scratching their head. This one is a pitch right across the center of the plate, and the brains put this one over the green monster and into the parking lot. Honorable mention, though, has to go to the final episode of the season. Yes, it's the one that Jack Perkins earlier had referred to. It's the infamous Manos, The Hands of Fate. This is frequently held up as the all-time worst film that MST3K has ever done. A film so terrible that Frank and Dr. Forrester would each separately slip in and quietly apologize for having to subject our heroes to this film. What sets Manos apart isn't that it's camp or anything that might make a film a good, bad movie. Manos is a bad, bad movie. It's a film made by someone who not only has clearly never made a movie, but based upon all evidence has likely never even seen a movie. There is no competence to be found on display in this film, none whatsoever. The story moves from tepid to banal.
So what are we, about a half hour into this movie?
No, I'm afraid not. It's more like a minute.
No.
Yeah.
Huh.
The only thing that's worse than the acting is the dialogue that they're speaking.
Why don't you guys leave us alone?
The cinematography makes the Zapruder film look like Apocalypse Now.
Every frame of this movie looks like someone's last known photograph.
And even the editing is atrocious, although in defense of whoever was responsible for that, they didn't have much to work with. The film was shot entirely with a small camera that had a limit of 32 seconds that it could record. So they would shoot the scene until they ran out of film, put fresh film in, and then continue the scene. Never mind how terrible it looked. Also, no sound was recorded on the day. It was all added in post. So you get the unique experience of an English movie that's dubbed into English. All this is why, no matter how much anyone might protest one contender or another, Manos is the standard. Nothing else can compare to how wretched this film is and how incompetent its creation was. If you bought a porn film made with this level of quality, you'd return it and loudly demand a refund. Oh, the story, if you want to call it that, is of a family vacation that goes awry when they wind up in the middle of nowhere where the master's residence is. Torgo, the presumably sadder creation with his hideous theme music.
That's not how you wear your Depends, Torgo.
Been hitting the thigh master, Torgo?
Torgo eventually admits them. Their dog is killed, the car won't start for them to leave, and eventually there's a confrontation with the demonic Manos. The film must be seen in order to be fully comprehended in its wretchedness. To further complement this experience is the second half of a short at the very beginning, Hired, that had its first half in the previous episode, Bride of the Monster. Hired is the tale of a sales manager whose salesmen all suck, but his crazy old man convinces him that it's actually his fault because he's not showing the leadership that men need.
We're gonna have leadership the way my old man told me. You put a handkerchief on your head. You swatted imaginary elves. You rock on the porch all night.
The DVD contains a special edit of the two halves together into a single seamless work, which is great because Hired is probably in the top 10 of shorts for them.
Oh, no, I don't want to buy a car.
Wait a minute. Can I tell you about the rear-wheel drive?
How many ways can I say no?
Wow,
All this showcased just how far the brains had come by adding so much to the show with films this bad. By now, with a good firm grasp of the show and how it works, I think it's safe to revisit Season 1 and now see it in the appropriate context, which I'll be doing next time.